Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, a podcast that gives a voice to narcissistic abuse survivors. I'm Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad, and thanks for tuning into this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Generally speaking, a narcissist is a person who has an excessive sense of how important they are. They demand and expect to be admired and praised by others and are limited in their capacity to appreciate others' perspectives. And guess what? Not all narcissists are made equal. Yes, that is true. Narcissism is a character trait that exists on a spectrum. A small amount of narcissism is healthy, and a person with an unhealthy level of narcissism may be called a narcissist. At extreme levels, it may be diagnosed as a narcissistic personality disorder. However, for the purposes of this podcast, a narcissist is a person who exhibits narcissistic traits and or a consistent pattern of maladaptive narcissistic behaviors, regardless of whether they meet the diagnostic criterion in the latest version of the DSM manual or have a formal diagnosis. So, a person may be referred to as a narcissist on this podcast, even if it is more likely that they have another cluster B personality disorder, such as borderline, histrionic, or antisocial personality disorder, so as long as they exhibit narcissistic traits and or behaviors. And now, with all that out of the way, let me tell you that we have a survivor on this episode named Grace, and she has lots of lessons to share with us, so stay tuned for that part of the show. But first, I just want to thank everyone in the Narcissist Apocalypse community for listening to the show and sharing your thoughts by email, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit. And if you haven't left us a review on whatever podcast service you use, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, CastBox, etc., leave us a 5-star written review if you can. It helps out a lot. If you can't do the actual written review, just give us a 5-star review. And now, the quickest way to be part of our show is if you want to read a letter to your narcissist and be part of our Letters to Our Narcissist compilation episode. We have a voicemail recorder on our website, so you can go to narcissistapocalypse.com. It's on the right-hand side of the page, and it's always floating and hard to miss. There's a button there that says Send Voicemail, so you press it, and away you'll go. We're accumulating these letters to have a volume 2 of that episode, so send in those voicemails. If you want me or my pal Melissa to read one of your letters instead, just send us an email to narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com. Put Letters to Your Narcissist in the subject line, and we'll go from there. Also, if you are using the recorder, it's 5 minutes is as long as you have. So if you have to record it twice, do it twice. 3 times, record it 3 times. 4, 5, as many times as you want to get your whole entire story or your letter in there. What else is going on? Let's see. Our fundraiser for Layla is going. Please keep on sending in your donations because Layla is going to get trauma therapy for a year. We're going to raise money for her. She was in the unfortunate circumstances of being married to a police officer, and that police officer was an abuser, and she has trauma issues, so she really needs this therapy badly. So everyone out in the community, go to our website, narcissistapocalypse.com, find the fundraiser section. Inside, you can hear Layla's story. You can read a little bit about it as well, and you can click on the fundraiser part and give to Layla, and we're going to help her have a better life. So that is that part of the intro here. I'm almost done. Before we get out of the way here, what else do I have here? Oh, I do have something else. I do. To the one person who sent me a voicemail this week, you sent me 3 voicemails, and we were discussing police abuse. You had the police abuse issue. I'm waiting for your email because I have information I need to send back to you, and you didn't leave it on the voicemail. I don't want to call because I don't want to shock you, or I know that you're screening your calls, and mine would come in unknown. So if you're listening to this, email me because I have information for you to get back to you. So get a hold of me, and we'll go from there. And what else do I got here? Socially, I went to see The Joker this week with an old friend. It was a decent movie. It was a good movie. I'm not going to complain about the movie. It was. I liked it more after the fact than when I did actually watch it. I felt it was kind of long, but the more I thought about it, the more I actually enjoyed the movie. And to that person who I went to that movie with, maybe one day you'll be sitting on the other end of these microphones and we can talk about your life a little bit. And besides that, I had a fun day at the park the other day with friends and their kids. We did our annual Yom Kippur walk. And for those of you that don't know what that is, in the Jewish faith, it's the Day of Atonement for all your sins. And it's my least favorite Jewish holiday because you also have to fast, which I do not. So I reinvented it. Instead, my two friends and I and their kids, we take a long walk and eventually end up at a pond or a river, and we throw stones in the water for everything we want to let go in the past year. And then after we're done that, we then throw stones for everything we want to accomplish or work on about ourselves this year. So that's what we did. And if you have a holiday that you don't like, do what we did. It's a good way to enjoy your day and look forward to your year and try and let go of the things from the past. It was a fun day as always. And we got a lot of steps in as well, and the kids had a good time too. And what else before we start the interview? In my notes here I have, there's a weird jump cut in this episode towards the end. You may not notice it, but it's there. Because during this interview, I'm still learning, especially when we actually recorded this interview. My memory card got full, so we did our best to try and figure out where to restart it. So I apologize about that. You may not even notice at all that it even occurred, but I do. Anyway, and now I'm going to get out of my own way. Here is my interview with Grace, and I'll check back in with all of you when it is over. So thank you to everyone out there who has tuned into this episode. And on this episode, we have a narcissist abuse survivor with me right now named Grace. How are you doing, Grace?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. We just talked for a little bit before this started, and I think we're kind of ready to go. So I'm going to just get out of your way for you to tell your story. And once again, thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me. Okay, well, my story, it starts off, basically, I was involved in a relationship for several years, and I was engaged to the individual that I was involved with. This was not the person that I was abused by. It wasn't the greatest relationship. Neither of us were really happy, but there was nothing, tumultuously going on in the relationship. But I ended up getting pregnant by him. We were engaged, so on and so forth. I had my daughter in 2011, and things just kind of fell off course in my existing relationship at that time because we were both a little bit older. We were very ill-prepared for the birth of my daughter. She's an amazing child, but she was a difficult baby. The first year of my daughter's life is basically a blur. Both of us were working full time, if not more. My daughter didn't sleep. I was exhausted. I was, a loan officer at the time. I worked at a bank, and I had been there for a few years. So at any rate, there was an individual that I worked with. He didn't work directly with me per se, but he worked, for the small bank that I worked for, and he was not somebody I got along with. I have a very strong personality. I'm very kind of tell it like it is. I had to deal with him sort of indirectly in the job, that I was in, and we didn't get along. He was very, trying to think of the word, like arrogant, very kind of loud, very boisterous, a little bit sleazy. Like, can't really think of a better, a different word for that. So I was out of work, for, I believe, a couple months after I had my daughter. I came back to work. I was literally exhausted, just kind of going through the motions of the day. That was it. Fast forward, till about a year after my daughter was born. This individual approached me at work one day and just started talking to me nicely, which was unusual because we didn't really get along. We sort of avoided each other. And he was just very sweet. I was taken aback because he was like, how are you doing? How is your daughter? is your man taking care of you? And, asking me all these questions when in reality I was very miserable in the situation that I was in, the relationship that I was in at the time. I mean, it was basically on its way out, more or less. Like, we had just been trying to work it out. And, I just was in a very vulnerable place in my life at that point. So basically it kind of just like escalated from there. We started talking at work. Like, it just so happened that like I would take lunch and he would take lunch at the same time. And, we just started to kind of, just chit chat at work, and it became a little flirtatious and, whatever. And I didn't really think anything of it. Like I said, I was just, exhausted in every aspect of my life at that point. So I want to say probably about it was like November of 2012. A bunch of us at work, I worked for a small place at that point. We had all made plans to go out to dinner after work on a Friday. So I had made arrangements. I was still living with my daughter's father at that point, but, like I said, our relationship was pretty much on its way out. I had made arrangements for him, to watch for that night. I told him that I was going to go out with my coworkers. And at the last minute, everybody kind of like couldn't go. Like, it was just weird. Like, it was like it was just a weird circumstance where like all these people were like, oh, I can't make it. Oh, my son is sick. And it just ended up just being me and him, really. Like, I'm not even joking. It ended up being me and this guy went out to dinner with each other because nobody else could go. And we actually had a really good time. So we were just, we had a couple drinks, we were talking, chit-chatting, blah, blah, blah. I gave him a ride home, went home, and then it just kind of escalated. He started texting me, I hate to use this terminology, but like literally like love bombing me. Like, oh, you look beautiful today. I would love to hang out with you again. Like, just kind of, and in my mind, I was kind of like, whatever. I didn't really care at that time. I was like, but it, sure enough, a few months later, to make a long story short, we were romantically involved with each other. And it was dysfunctional. Even to me, like in the beginning, it was just, even though there's nothing I can like put my finger on that was like weird. I think it was just weird the way the circumstance happened. Like, he knew I was still living with somebody. He knew I had, basically, a newborn. But we became involved nonetheless. But it was always like, I don't know. There was always like, I kind of kept a distance. Like, I didn't let myself get like fully involved with him because I knew I still had other, situations going on in my life that needed to be sorted out. So needless to say, I would say maybe about 6 months in, things just started getting strange. I just started to kind of just like, I didn't feel right about what was happening. I didn't really know who to confide in because everybody that knew me knew, me and my daughter's father were together. We were engaged, like everybody kind of was just in tune with that part of my life. Nobody really knew what was really happening. So I didn't really have anybody to talk to about it. And I was just I was all over the place, as far as that part of my life was concerned. But it just started getting weird. I started to notice kind of like little like head games, if you will. Certain things like, oh, well, I'll call you tonight, or, stuff like, and then he wouldn't call, or, just stupid stuff, but like stuff that would like kind of like mess with my head a little bit. And I remember like talking to my brother about the situation. My brother was like, you need to stop talking to this person immediately. Like, even if you and, your daughter's father are not going to stay together, like this individual, like you need to like just cut all ties. And I was like, no, you're right. Like, in my mind, I knew he was right, but it was hard because I worked with him, and, nobody at work knew anything was going on, because I just preferred it that way. I mean, it's just extremely unprofessional when you work somewhere and you're involved with some, I just wanted to keep it separate. But the problem is like he started to mess with me at work. Like he started to purposely flirt with other people in front of me. Specifically the person that I shared an office with, you know, like just playing like all these mind games with me and to the point where I was getting upset at work. And, ultimately about a year in, to us sort of having whatever was going on between us, I suspected that he was messing around with the person that I shared an office with, which wasn't necessarily happening, but I found out that he was trying to. And then when I found out and I confronted him with the proof that I had, it became my fault. And it was my fault because I was going through her things when she was on vacation. You know, it was just, you know, I prefer to not get into too much detail about that, but just stuff like that kept happening. So it got to the point where I left the job. Like I found a different job and I was like, I don't want to even have to deal with this every day, like Monday through Friday. I just, you know, whatever happens between me and him, whatever, but I just don't want to deal with it anymore. So I actually left the job, found a different job, thought that things would perhaps get better, but they only got worse at that point. So after I started my new job, you know, me and my daughter's father officially, like, it was, like, over. Like, he went his own way. I went my own way. I bought a condo. And when I bought my condo is when things went from, like, kind of, like, bad and sketchy to, like, worse. Like, things got really bad.
I have one question. When you and your the father of your daughter separated for good, at that point, did you think, okay, that part of my life is over. I'm going to raise my daughter. This other guy's out of the way. Was your mind at this point like everything is good? Was there a split second where it was good, or was just still kind of declining?
No, I was actually really sort of upset over the way things played out. Because I always had like in the back of my mind, I always knew what was happening between me and the new person was weird or something wasn't right. And I always knew that in the back of my mind, but I kind of like ignored it and brushed it aside. My daughter's father is a great father. And we're still in each other's lives even to this day. We split, custody with her 50-50. We live 5 minutes from each other. We both see her, you know, all the time. We do stuff with her, you know, together. Like I'm on good terms with his family. He's on good terms with my family, you know, so we're very much still entwined in each other's lives. The problem is that he's not like a really good communicator. So like, it's never really been discussed like what happened, but I think like he knows what happened. I know what happened. He knows that I was seeing somebody else. You know, it was never really talked about, because we knew we weren't really happy together anyway, but we're still, you know, when that ended, no, I didn't feel like a sense of relief, if that's what you're asking. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't feel like, oh, okay, cool, I can be with this guy now, because quite frankly, this guy, you know, the new guy was a complete moron. Like, he was an idiot. And I kind of felt like, you know, maybe I made a mistake, you know, like that was always in the back of my mind. But, you know, here I was, you know, these are major life decisions. You know, we left the house that we shared together. You know, he had his house, I had mine. You know, there was no going back at that point. Like, you know, so that was that. So I'm with this new person. I don't really know, you know, I don't really know what that means anymore. Because I thought we were together, but I don't believe in his eyes we ever really like we were committed to each other as far as he's concerned. But I do know that, shortly after, like I have already said, I always knew something wasn't right and something was off. Shortly after, I had gotten my own place and, there was an incident when, first let me say this. It got to the point where, okay, when we first started hanging out, if that's what you want to call it, it's like he couldn't get enough of me. Like, I was beautiful, I was this, I was that, I was so much fun to be around. He loved talking to me. He was so attracted to me. But I can literally, like, pinpoint that there is a point in time when that just stopped. Like, that stopped. And that was when I was like, okay, well, what's the problem? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you were so into me and all of a sudden you're not. Did you meet somebody else? And, like, I tried to have this conversation with him, but having this conversation with him was like having this conversation with like an invalid, like, cause you don't get any answers. You don't get anywhere. Like, you're talking yourself in circles. So I just kind of like let that go. And I think, oh, well, maybe, when people are together for a certain period of time, they're not, the honeymoon is over. And I literally can tell you, I quote, like, he said that to me. Oh, well, the honeymoon phase is over and, that happens. And I'm thinking, well, we haven't even known each other that long. Like, what do you mean, So one incident that sticks in my mind very vividly when I knew that something was, like, really wrong. Like, this just went, like, beyond a bad relationship, because everybody's had bad relationships or dysfunctional relationships. But this particular incident is when I was like, okay, something's not right. Like, I'm being abused. I had bought tickets to go see a show of some sort in the area where I live. And I remember vividly, like, getting ready and, like, doing my hair nice. And I had stopped at the store on my way to his place. And I even remember, like, the cashier at the store being like, your hair looks awesome. And it was a guy that said that to me. And he was like, oh, your hair looks awesome. You look great. And I was like, oh, thanks. Like, I remember I was, like, feeling really good about myself and, whatever. And I show up at this place, and I remember walking in and him looking at me, and he'd be like, what the hell? He literally, and I quote, he goes, what the hell did you do to your hair? And I was like, I remember just standing there and being like, am I did he just say that to me? Like, my hair looks great. Like, what is he talking about? Like, just trying to, like, tear me down for no reason, just trying to find anything that he could to, like, tear me down. So then wouldn't the universe have it that we show up at this show that I had gotten tickets for, and one of the people that we worked with at the prior job that I had left because of him was there. And she was sitting, like, a few rows behind us with her family and her husband or whatever. And I remember him getting so nervous and so, like, he couldn't sit still, and he was super antsy, and that's because he was basically trying to sleep with everybody there behind my back. You know what I mean? And, like, he didn't want her to see us there. So that was that. And I remember being like, okay, this guy won't even come near me. Like, he's all antsy, he's nervous. And I was just like, he insulted me. And I just remember being over, like, ugh, like, so we went out after and we got drunk. Like, I remember just being so frustrated and so, like, I'm like, my whole life has basically been in upheaval for the past year because of this person. I remember getting drunk, and afterward we went back to his place, and I remember, like, just, trying to, like, cuddle with him or trying to this and try to that. And I remember him, like, pushing me away from him. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you pushing me away? He's like, I just don't want to be near you right now. I'm like, why? What did I do? You know, like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. Before I know it, it just kind of went back and forth and back and forth. And he's like, just go to bed. And like, anybody who knows me well knows that I'm not the kind of person who can just go to bed. If, like, I'm upset or something is unsettled, I don't just go to bed. Like, I will stay up all night. Like, I need resolution. Like, I need to feel calm. Like, I can't just go to bed. And he was like, just go to bed. Just shut up. Just go to bed. And I was like, no, what the heck is your problem? Like, you need to tell me what your problem is. And that's when I kind of brought up, like, how I was upset, how he insults my hair, how he, well, literally, before I knew it, he had picked, I don't know, because it was dark in the room and I had had a few drinks, but I know exactly what happened. He had picked up a sock, one of his dirty socks off the floor, and he stuffed it in my mouth, and he was like, will you shut up now? Will this make you shut up? Is this enough to make you shut up? And I remember, like, literally freezing. Like, I froze, and I was like, what the hell just happened? Like, I've never had somebody physically pin me down. I've never had somebody display that sort of aggression toward me. You know, physically stuff anything in my mouth. And I just remember, like, and he was a big guy. I mean, he was a lot bigger than me. I'm 5'2", I'm small, like, and I just remember, like, he got off of me, and I just remember going out in his living room and just sitting there on his couch until the wee hours of the morning when I felt safe, like, to drive home, you know, because I had been drinking a little bit. And then I just left. And I went home, and I just remember getting home and just my mind was just like spinning. Like, I was just like, I don't even know what just happened. I can't believe somebody would do something like that to me. I just remember just feeling, I can't even like fully get into like what I was feeling, but wouldn't you know, as the morning, he didn't care. I mean, he went right back to sleep. Like, it didn't matter. And then I remember about, like, noon, like, the following day, he just texted me, and he was like, hey, what's up? Like, that didn't just happen the night before when I was, like, so distraught and so, like, confused about, like, what just happened. And it was just, like, and I was like, you need to call me. Like, we need to talk. So, like, he called me, and I was like, do you understand, like, what just happened? Like, last night, like, you physically stuffed one of your socks in my mouth. And he was like, oh no, you deserved it. You hit me. I was like, I did not hit you. Like, I've never hit a person in my life. Like, I didn't hit you. Like, he was like trying to like turn it, like, literally, he was so manipulative. By the time the conversation ended, he had me feeling like it was my fault. And I believed it. Like, I believed it was, like, my fault. Like, oh, okay, that's what happened. All right, well, I deserve that. Like, literally, that's how I felt. And it just ricocheted from there. I mean, incidents like that happens a lot with him. I don't know.
So it can, so that kind of stuff just continued, and did it snowball? Did it get bigger?
It didn't get bigger, but I think the impact it had on me became worse. Mm-hmm. Because literally every time that something like that happened, it became my fault. If I found, so then I started like noticing everything. I became like hyper aware at that point. Like, I was like just looking for things like he's cheating on me or he's this, and he was. I mean, there's no question that he was, but I didn't want to believe it because I didn't see like the actual tangible proof. Like, it got to the point where I was so, like, under his spell, if you will, which is, like, crazy. And that's why, like, I have not even told these things to like people that are extremely close to me and know me so well, because they wouldn't believe it. They wouldn't be like, there's no way you would let that happen. Like, how would you let that happen? But he had me so like under his spell, if you will, that like if I physically witnessed him sleeping with somebody, he would turn it around and manipulate me into believing that I didn't really see it. Like, if that makes sense.
So at this point, you aren't telling anyone what's going on, and you think you're crazy.
No. Nobody knew at this point the extent of what was happening. It got to the point where I started to incidents like, you know, there's a million, so I'm not even going to every single one of them, but incidents like, you know, the sock incident, things like that were happening more and more. You know, stupid stuff, like even like, oh, well, I'll call you tonight, and then he doesn't call me, and then I don't hear from him for days, or, you know, just stuff that like really had me in a very anxious state 24/7, you know, for days on end, when it's like, I have I have a job, I have a daughter, I have a home, like I can't be feeling this way, but I was, and that just rubbed me so wrong that I was just so anxious, and that's when I really started drinking a lot, because it was my only way to like I felt to calm myself down and to not worry about so much what was happening or where he was or what he was doing, or it got to the point where like I started trying to tell people in my life. You know, I had tried to tell my mother, and that was a bad mistake, because she's the kind of person, well, then just leave him, just walk away, you know. But at this point, I feel like it wasn't that easy. Like, I don't know why it wasn't that easy, but it just, to me, it wasn't that easy. I've read a lot about like the chemical addiction that people can have to people in these sort of situations. And like, I was feeling that. Like, I had gone through periods of time where I can't even tell you how many times I changed my phone number. I would ignore him. I would block him. I would do, you know, anything that I could, because I'm like, okay, I just have to like break away from him. I have to. And then he would show up with flowers, or he would, you know, every single time I tried to break away and like, I mean it this time, I'm not going to talk to him again. Then he would come back even, you know, tenfold. You know what I mean? Like,
he'd come back harder and stronger every single time.
Right. And it would work every single time. And like, it got to the point where I was just, I literally, and just to give you a little bit of background, like, I'm a very smart person. Like, I am very self-sufficient. Like, I was not reliant on him financially. He was not the father of my child. I had my own home. He had nothing. Like, I didn't need anything from him at that point. It was emotional. Like, he had some kind of like emotional control over me. And I, to this day, like, I'm still trying to figure that out, or why I allowed that to happen. But this person just had such a control over me, because he had me. I mean, I don't even want to use that term, he had me, but when dealing with him, I was in like the darkest day. I mean, I was at the point where I was drinking every day. And I don't even know how I was still like functioning and going to work and taking care of my daughter, because I was, but I was just going through the motions at that point. You know, and this went on for like 5 years, you know, just these games, you know, I'd show up to his house and, you know, not to be too descriptive, but like, it got to the point where I'd go to his house and I'd be like, oh, I have to use the bathroom. And I'd go into the bathroom. I'd go through his garbage. Like, literally, like, I would go through his garbage because I would find stuff. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, I would find like condom wrappers and like, and I would confront him with it. Oh no, that's not for me. Oh, not. And then it's like, I was just so like, oh, okay. Oh, all right. I get it now. And I was just making excuses for myself because I didn't want to break it off with him. Like, I didn't want to take responsibility for the fact that I'm like allowing this relationship to continue, or this abuse. Like, I mean, he got me to the point where he would even say, like, he would say, there were times when I would be in such despair over, like, you know, I would call him out on something. Anytime I would call him out on something, he would ignore me. And sometimes he would ignore me for weeks. I'm not joking. He wouldn't answer his phone. He wouldn't call me. He would act as though I never existed. And that would be like kind of like the most troubling thing to me, because I'm a communicator. Like, if you hate me, tell me you hate me. Like, don't ignore me. Like, that's what would drive me insane, would be like the ignoring me. And he would use that as a tool to just get me crazy. Seriously, I feel like in my heart, like, he would use that because he knew how crazy that would get me. And he would ignore me. And then I would get to the point, literally after like a few weeks, I would get to the point where I'd be like angry. And I'd be like, fuck him. I don't want to talk to him ever again. I hate him. Like, I'd be so mad. And wouldn't you know, that's when he would show up with flowers, or he would, like, you know, oh, everything's going to be okay. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm not, you know, and then I'd be like, okay, well, maybe it'll be different this time. But it was never different. It would just get worse. And it was just the most despicable situation that I could imagine anybody being in. It was demeaning. It destroyed my self-esteem for so long. I literally had no self-esteem. Like, I stopped caring about the way I looked. I stopped caring about really anything. And when I started kind of going, like, I would say maybe about 3 years in is when I started going, like, quote unquote, like, public, like, with what was really happening. But I just found that I kind of got criticized more by doing that, because people would be like, well, then just stop talking to him then. Just cut it out. Leave him alone. Like, don't answer his phone calls. Don't allow him to come over. Don't, you know, so it was just like, instead of really getting like that understanding from anybody, I got, you know, put in a situation where I was feeling even worse about myself and about my choices.
That is probably the worst thing that could have happened. I mean, you're going to people for support, and you just want someone who's non-judgmental, who's going to listen to you. And you got, you know, you kind of got like when someone's depressed and someone just says, like, just buck up, like that kind of response. At that point, you know, you're addicted to this man. You literally are addicted.
I was addicted to him for sure. Like, I can admit that.
Yeah.
I definitely was.
And it's hard to quit. You're bonded to this person. You're struggling every day for a solid 5 years.
It was definitely a solid 5 years. It was probably more than that off and on, but I would say for like a solid 5 years. Yeah.
So you have an addiction to him. You're drinking throughout this whole entire period. Is your life careening out of control on the drinking part?
Yes. At a certain point, yes, it definitely was.
Like you're a functioning alcoholic at that point, careening towards unfunctional?
I was getting to that point. On many occasions I got to that point, but then I had to really like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to stop because I have to work and I have a child. And I would tell myself that. And then, you know, I'd go like a week or whatever, and then something would happen, or, you know, something would happen between me and him, and it would like set me off the rails again, you know? It was bad. I mean, honestly, like, I thank God, like, that I didn't get pulled over. I didn't hurt myself. I didn't hurt anybody else. Because it was really, really out of control at a certain point, because that was the only means in my mind that I could get through the situation that I was in. Mm-hmm. Because anybody that I talked to, all they did was persecute me. I sought counseling, and I had counselors dismiss me, because I wasn't being abused in the typical sense of being abused. I wasn't living with a man who was coming home and like beating the crap out of me every day. Like I wasn't dealing with that sort of situation. You know, and I come across as a very self-sufficient individual. So I don't think these counselors or therapists were taking me seriously. They were just thinking, oh, well, you're in a bad situation. Just stop talking to him. You know, like I was kind of getting it from all directions. So like I was seeking help. I was seeking something, you know. I was trying to let people know, like, this is what's going on with me. Like, I am losing it, because I was getting to a point where it was so bad. Like, I mean, I remember him leaving me a voicemail, and I've since deleted anything that had anything to do with him. I mean, I remember him leaving me a voicemail telling me how useless I was and I should just kill myself, you know? Like, I mean, these are the kind of things like this person was saying to me, and this was happening on a daily, if not weekly, you know. I mean, this was happening constantly. And like, I was, you know, I live alone. I'm with my dog, you know, I have her half the time, you know, the other time, you know, I'm sitting here going crazy. And like, I was reaching out to every avenue that I could possibly find at a certain point, and I was getting shut down every single time literally. Like,
it's like the system failed you, like your support system failed you, the medical, I guess, you know, the therapy industry failed you. Everywhere you've turned, were looking for help that you needed to get out of the situation. All you really needed was probably one person to say, I'm here for you. I get it. And that would really help propel you. But at every single step, it wasn't there, and it kind of went on. And it sounds like, you know, which I think we would eventually get to, is your conundrum within yourself is probably saying to yourself, or trying to look internally, how did I let this continue to go on for so long? How did I get here? What happened maybe in my past that made me so susceptible to this?
Right.
And is that is kind of what a big problem with what you're dealing with right now is?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head with that.
Because one thing you have to remember here, for yourself, is you were looking for help. You were looking for these things to help you in these situations, and that all these systems failed you. I mean, at one point you have to say to yourself, you have to look at it and say, I was trying. And I was doing my best. I was looking for anyone who could be my ally to be my witness to what was going on. And everyone who you were listening, who was you wanted to listen, it didn't work. Right. And that was nothing that you could have controlled. You were actually trying, and, you know, to think that, you know, it went on for a long time, but of course it did, because no one was listening to you. And I think that's a big part of what we're dealing with. Like, you know, if you're raised in a narcissistic household or you're dating someone, if you're crying out to all these people, like, this is what's going on and no one's listening to you, it's one of the most frustrating things in the world. And number two, since no one is listening, it's just going to continue most likely until you find someone to say, like, yes, this is going on. You are not crazy. I am here to listen to you and help you with whatever you're doing. So just so you know, I mean, you did try, and to mentally, hopefully, have that kind of sink in with other healing work that you are doing right now.
Right. No, I appreciate that, because, you know, it got me to the point where I was feeling hopeless. I was feeling more isolated. I was feeling like, okay, well, I guess I'm stuck in this situation because this is the only person I have. Like, literally, my mindset was so twisted and so warped at a certain point. I thought, well, at least I have him, when he was the very person that was destroying me. Like, you know, and I in this phone call, I can't even begin to describe, you know, all of sort of, you know, the manipulation and the abuse, you know, the emotional abuse, honestly, which was even more disturbing to me, as crazy as that sounds. I just started to feel hopeless. At a certain point, I felt hopeless. I was like, okay, well, I'm never going to get out of this. I have nobody left. My family basically didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to believe it. And you want to know why is because, it was very textbook. Is he came across so charming and so charismatic and so my family, they've all met him and they thought he was a great guy. They really did. They thought it was me. I was the one.
So why did they think that? Growing up, was this an issue with you and your family that there was a trust issue with them or not?
Well, I don't. Is there a trust issue with my family? Yeah, probably, for sure. I didn't grow up in the greatest family. I didn't grow up in the worst family either. I could say it was a very broken home. And everybody is just kind of it's dog eat dog in my family. You know what I mean? Everybody just kind of is looking out for themselves at this point, and that's, for me, the hardest thing for me was to tell my father, what was happening. Because I went through probably about a 15-year period of time where I didn't speak with him. Not by my own choice. It was his choice. It was his doing. We didn't speak for about 15 years. We started talking, I want to say about 2 or 3 years before I had my daughter. And we tried to reestablish a relationship, because I was always very, very close with my father growing up. And I always had kind of those insecurities. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've never had a great relationship with a man. I really, truly haven't. So I'm not going to candy coat that, but I've never, there's bad relationships and then there's horrific relationships, abusive relationships. I've never had a horrifying experience till this particular experience. I've just always kind of had dysfunctional, codependent sort of, situations. And I was always kind of one of those people that just kind of jumped from relationship to relationship, was never alone, if you will. I've never really had a period in my life until now, which it's a good thing, until now where I wasn't involved with somebody to some capacity. So the hardest thing for me, I think, was to really kind of tell my father what was up, what was happening, what was going on with me and this individual. And I told him, and he seemed to really understand and have compassion and get it. I think it made him uncomfortable. I think it hurt him. I think he took some of the blame, which honestly, and I hate to say this, he should. Because I think he sort of ingrained that insecurity in me where I feel or I felt, because I don't necessarily feel that way right now, but I think throughout all of my adult life, I always kind of felt I needed somebody at all costs, even if but this situation, it became a cost to myself, my life, my livelihood. And I think it bothered him. But, just to kind of bring it back, he came to visit me recently, very recently, in fact, because he doesn't live near me. He came to visit me with his now wife, and she made a comment to me. She made a comment to me one night that really, really, really stuck with me and really, really bothered me. It upset me after they left, and I really had the chance to kind of sit and think about it. Is the first night they came here, we went out to dinner, and we came home and we were just talking, and she brought up my daughter's father, which she doesn't even know him, but she was like, oh, I wish you two could have worked it out. And I said, well, that's not going to happen. That's over with. We co-parent great. We get along for the sake of my daughter. Everything is fine as far as that's concerned. Basically is what I was trying to say. And she was like, well, you're probably going to be alone forever then.
What?
Right. And I was like, well, what? And I just remember, like, I was like, well, what the hell kind of thing is that to say? And she was like, well, I'm saying you're probably going to be alone forever. Like, you seem set in your ways and you're not open to anything, so you're probably going to be alone forever. And I was like, in my head, I was like, who the hell do you think you are to say that to me? Like, and my father, who knows the situation, or I thought he understood the situation because I confided in him. Like, it took me a lot to tell him what was really going on with me at a certain point in my life. And he just sat there and didn't say a damn thing. And I was like, who the hell are you to tell me I'm going to be alone forever? Like, you don't even know what I just went through like a year ago. And you're going to sit there and say that to me when I welcome you into my home. And like, oh, I was so mad. And honestly, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, my boundaries are so solid right now because that's the one thing I never had was boundaries. My boundaries are so solid. I have not even spoken to my father, like, honestly, because I expressed to him how much that bothered me and how insulting that was and how out of line that was. And he did not have the same view. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to keep in my mind, I was like, well, I'm going to keep my distance right now because that's not okay.
Mm-hmm. No, I have a friend. If that was said to one of my friends, she would have clapped back, and then probably said, "If you say something like that again, you're going to catch these hands." That's not something you say to someone out of the blue. You don't really know them that well. Right. I mean, it's something you don't say. And your father's reaction, obviously, he's in this is his wife and you're his daughter. He's in whatever spot he's in. He took the side of his wife. All the power to him, but you're his daughter and you should be the yes, he's remarried, but you're still his daughter. His number one priority in life, once you have a child, is to protect your child. And good on you for having that boundary.
Right. No, I have to because, I literally, there was a point in my life where I didn't know, and I'm talking recent, going back like a year, I didn't know what boundaries were, honestly, because they had never been established for me. Like, I was never taught as a child, like, boundaries or like the proper, my parents had a very dysfunctional relationship. They didn't necessarily have an abusive relationship, but they had a very dysfunctional relationship. And I was never really taught like boundaries. I was just, I saw my mother very needy, always needing a man, and my father dismissive. And, that was like the kind of thing that I always saw, growing up and, even into my teens. So, I don't hate my father. I love my father, but, I can love him from a distance right now because I don't need to be told, oh, well, you're probably going to be alone forever. That was very insulting to me, because I've been through a lot. And, right now I'm at the point where I don't really care if I'm alone forever. Do I want to be alone? No, realistically, I don't really think a lot of people do, but I don't care right now at this point. That is not, that's not my objective is meeting somebody and dating and, any of that. That's really, really, truly not my objective. Which sort of like brings me to, the end of the end, if you will, with this person. It got to the point where I was like, really sort of like a paranoid mess, if you will. Like, I don't really know how else to describe it. I mean, I had figured out how to hack into everything he had. Like, I'm not joking. Like, I could get into all his emails. Like, it's not, like I seriously could be like a PI at this point. So I like had gotten into all his emails, had gotten the only thing, and I don't do social media. I just don't. Like, I just value my privacy too much. Like, I really, truly do. I'm a very private person. You know, I'm sort of all about like connections with people. Like I'm not on social media. I'll reactivate my Facebook every now and again just to kind of see like, oh, I heard so-and-so had a baby. I want to see a picture, you know, but I'm not like all in, you know, like on social media. So the one thing I couldn't get into for the life of me, as much as I tried, I could not get into this person's Facebook. And I knew that's what held the key. I swear to God, and I know this sounds so crazy, but I knew like that's where everything was, but I couldn't get in there. So I could get into everything, and I could see, you know, I saw stuff, whatever. In June of last year, one of my best friends, who's one of like the few friends I have left, like, because so many people got so sick of hearing about my tumultuous relationship that they just like walked away. You know, they didn't want anything to do with me. And I can't blame them because I didn't even want anything to do with myself at a certain point. I got so sick of hearing myself talk. So her mother had passed away. I went to a wake. I came home because they had set up like some kind of like fund, you know, to donate money to Alzheimer's because she passed away of like early onset. So I came home and I went to go log into my work computer because I'm like, well, you know, let me donate, you know, money in her memory. You know, I just went to her memorial. I'm telling you, I'm not even joking. Like, I've never been able to get into this person's Facebook. I pull up my work computer. I open it up. The home page is his Facebook. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like, I don't know if, like, he was on it or he logged into it from my work computer and just never logged out. I don't know what the situation was, but all I know is, like, the first thing I did is I went to all of his private messages and I read every single one, and it confirmed everything that I knew or thought to begin with. And that was it. In my mind, I was like, I have to cut all ties with this person, like, immediately, because I was at the point where I was just so weak and so, like, torn down and so, like, under his, like, control that I was like, this is it. Like, this is it. Like, I'm done. And I text him. I just like I am, I always have to have the last word. So I took screenshots of all of the, you know, quote unquote incriminating messages. I text them to him and I said, do not ever contact me again. And I blocked his number. I blocked every means of contact that he could have with me. I threw out everything he ever gave me. Like, I just wanted, at that point, I had had enough. Like, I wanted my life back. Like, I wanted to be me again. And that was it. He never tried to contact me. He never showed up at my house. I went through a period of withdrawal. I'm going to be completely frank with you. Like, I went through a period where I physically was withdrawing from this person, but I just went through it because I was like, this is it. Like, because it's going to get to the point where I am going to drink myself to death. I'm going to get in an accident and kill myself by accident, or he's going to kill me because I'm going to terrorize him so much. Like, it just, all these scenarios played out in my mind, and I was like, I'm going to lose my home. I'm going to lose my daughter. I'm going to, like, I have to get it together. And I did. And, I did slowly but surely. And I can honestly tell you that out of anything that I've ever tried, and I tried it all, out of anything that I ever tried, is going complete 100% no contact was the only thing that helped me. It is the only thing that got me into a better frame of mind where I could finally, like, be like, okay, what do I do now? You know, like, it got me into, like, a safe, like, comfortable space where I was like, okay, I have not spoken to this person. He's not inside of my head anymore. I don't have to listen to him. I don't have to deal with him. I just have to deal with how I'm feeling. Where do I go from here? You know? And it took me a long time.
Sorry, did you stop drinking immediately, or did it take you a while to stop drinking?
Oh, God, no. I don't... It took me a while. You know, I was always like, before I met him, I was always like a social drinker. I mean, I was never like not a drinker per se. I was never like a, you know, raging drunk, to that degree. He definitely had substance abuse issues, for sure. And to the extent, I don't really know. Like, I don't know if I suspect he stole like pain pills from me, like, you know, but he was definitely a drinker. Like he was an alcoholic for sure. So it just kind of was a catalyst, you know, for drinking, like hanging out with him. It was a given, you know, anytime we hung out, we were going to drink, or he was going to drink at least. And then I was going to join in, or we were going to go out to dinner and then get a few drinks. And then it just kind of, it always like sort of escalated. Like there was never a time. I literally, in 5 years, I can count on less than 10 fingers the amount of times he was not drinking around me. Like, seriously. He was always drunk. He wasn't like a raging lunatic drunk either, though. That was the thing. So it was like deceiving. So like you would think like, oh, well, he's had a few drinks, but he's fine. He's normal. But, you know, typical narcissist fashion, I would say about maybe 5 months before I finally cut him off completely, I was in the car with him, and he had gotten pulled over, and he got a DUI, and got arrested. So he was in serious trouble. He lost his license. He was going through court, you know, all of that. 3 months later, he got pulled over again, and got another DUI. So he was basically facing jail time at that point. And I was kind of hoping that that would be the case so that it would make it easier for me to like just kind of cut him off completely. Like it would give him no avenue to contact me or come back into my life. But unfortunately he got a good attorney. I don't know how or where or what, but he didn't end up going to jail. But wouldn't you know is that apparently it was the city, you know, that he lived in, it was their fault, you know, that he got the DUIs. It wasn't his fault, and he didn't have a drinking problem. And I was like, dude, nobody gets pulled over in a matter of 3 months and gets 2 DUIs and they don't have a drinking problem. You know what I mean? Like, obviously you have a drinking problem. Like, it's nobody else's fault but your own, you know? And, you know, it was just everything else was everybody else's fault. You know, he felt he was above the law. He was just above everybody, you know? You know, like I said,
sorry,
I don't even know.
Sorry, I'm sorry. It's my fault. So now that you're out of this and you've gone no contact,
right?
How long has it been? And I guess where are you in your stage of the healing process? Are you, and have you found a good therapist? What is kind of going on, and what have you done?
Okay. No, I have not yet to find a good therapist. I have not, honestly. I was seeing somebody, I want to say like up until like December of last year. And I just found her, you know, it was okay. I mean, it was cool to go to somebody and talk and, you know, vent or whatever, but I kind of almost just felt like she was like going through the motions. Like she wasn't really like, you know, she was just there to get a paycheck at the end of the day. Like, that's honestly how I felt. Like, I wasn't really feeling like she was really understanding the magnitude of sort of the incidents that I was, like, explaining to her. But as far as me and him, I have not spoken to him since June, I want to say early June of 2018. I blocked every avenue, at least I thought. I blocked every avenue that would give him a way in or a way to contact me. But I did actually get an email from him. And I actually found this to be extremely pathetic. I got an email from him. I want to say it was like late January of this year. And I deleted it. So I didn't even like sit there and like ruminate over it and reread it or anything like that. He said something like, oh, well, I miss you so much and blah, 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 blah. And honest to God, I know he was looking for a reaction, but I couldn't help myself. Like I responded and I was like, what do you mean you miss me? Because almost what he said to me was humorous. Like it didn't provoke like a sadness, if you will, because I'm over him. I'm just not necessarily sort of like over like the trauma sort of like what happened. But I'm completely over him. Like I literally don't ever want to see his face like for the rest of my life. So I responded and I was like, well, what do you mean you miss me? Like, LOL, you know, like, what are you talking about? You don't miss me. You're out of your mind. Like, don't contact me again. Like, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was like something along those lines. So wouldn't you know, of course his tone changed. He responded and he goes, oh, like the typical dog you are, always barking back. Or he said something stupid like that to me, like something like very demeaning, you know, because I didn't give him what he wanted, you know. He wanted me to be like, oh, yes, I'm heartbroken. I miss you too, you know, and I didn't give him that because he always like wanted that like emotional mental control over me, and like he didn't have it anymore, and he came back with something insulting and I deleted it. I didn't even respond after that. And then the next day I was like, okay, well, how the heck do you block somebody off of Yahoo? You know, because my main personal email is Yahoo. I figured it out. I blocked him and I have not heard from him since.
How do you heal? Because I assume you have a lack of trust in everything. Yes.
Your assumption is right.
I mean, you couldn't have anything but a lack of trust in everything that's gone on. So where do you go?
I don't trust anybody.
So explain that. Like, where is your trust? Like, how do you rebuild your trust, or is that something you have to work on?
It's a constant. I mean, you want to know where I put my trust? Is I try to put my trust in myself at this point, because I got to a point where I didn't trust even myself. Like, I didn't even trust my own decisions, my own choices. I have put a lot of trust back into myself. A lot of time spent alone, which was very uncomfortable for me at first, because I've never done that. Like, I've never been in a situation where I'm like, I'm all I have. And honest to God, like that's been the best thing that could have ever happened to me is me just being alone without anybody else to rely on. Because I think my issue to begin with was me not loving myself. Like, honestly, I don't know how else to put it.
Like your whole life?
Well, I mean, probably my whole adult life. Mm-hmm. You know, I can't really, speak for my childhood, because you're still kind of developing your sense of love and stuff at that point. But I think, my whole adult life, I was sort of seeking validation and love, from outward sources, and not really realizing that, the way I love myself is sort of a reflection of how people treat me. Like, I don't love myself, I mean, who you know? So I had to, the cold hard truth is.
Sorry, as far as your process then goes of healing, loving, eventually you might reframe your whole experience where, yes, this is a traumatic experience. This did happen to me. But I guess eventually one day, I guess when no one is truly ever healed from this type of situation. But as far as reframing it, will you reframe it in a way where, you say this happened, but I finally learned to love myself?
I'm not at that point yet.
Okay.
I mean, I'm still learning how to love myself. I'm still learning my boundaries. I mean, you'd be surprised how many people get cut off out of your life when you start to love yourself. You become a very lonely person for a little while when you start to establish those boundaries. And I think that's what keeps a lot of people stuck in maybe any addictive type behavior is like kind of like the feeling of being alone, like being completely alone in your own thoughts, your own turmoil and such. But, I'm still learning how to love myself. I'm going to be 40 this year. So it's like, wow, like it's taken me 40 years to get to this point, but I'm getting there.
Yeah,
slowly.
you're getting there. I think I wrote this down because I liked what you said. Hopefully I'll go back and re-listen to it so I can write it down properly. But I think you said it's lonely when you finally start setting boundaries. I didn't write it properly, but it's along the lines. It's a really interesting thing to say. That's a real interesting line. It's
so true because you would be surprised how many people go away at that point.
Yeah, that don't like the new you.
They don't like the new. And it's not even like they don't like the.
They don't like the you that respects yourself.
Yeah, they don't. I've had people just, let me come over. Let me, hang out. Listen, I don't want that. Like, I don't want any nonsense. Like,
you want a no drama life.
No drama, no nonsense. And I love, honest to God, love is that's not the right word because there's days when I like my quietness. Like, I love being alone, but I get lonely, don't get me wrong, but at least I can go to bed at night with like dignity. Like, okay, well, nobody like walked all over me or abused me today. I may feel a little bit lonely, but that's not going to last forever. But, the problem is the thing that's been hard for me is my entire life is like, I've always like, I've made that mistake of like, okay, well, one relationship ended badly. Let me run out and find another one right away. Let me fill that void. And it took me this particular situation to be like, no, trying to fill that void externally isn't cutting it right now. Like, basically, I have to love myself because I'm going to be completely frank with you. And this is the one realization that I came to throughout this whole experience, and a lot of people may not want to face this or agree with this or get this, but a normal, quote unquote normal, because I don't really know what that means right now, but quote unquote normal, healthy person would not allow what happened to me happen to them. So I really had to take like a look at myself and be like, why did I allow this? Why did this keep happening? Like, why did I allow this to keep happening? Because a normal, healthy person would have been like, fuck you, like, I'm done. Like, they wouldn't have dealt with that. But I just kept, like, going through it and putting myself through it because I was really, like, seeking some sort of validation and some sort of love. And, like, it's deep. Like, it's really, like, it's deep. And I'm still working through that because I'm, like, there's no way if I was in a right frame of mind and I was really, truly loving myself that I would allow that to happen.
I've been there, and a lot of us listening have been in your exact same position. So you're not alone. And for you, you're just trying to find the person to help you, be with you, to get there, to get that trust back in other people before you even go into any sort of relationship. Let's just get trust back with like friendships and authority figures. Right. You know what I mean? With authority figures or people that you're supposed to
trust. I need
my
trust back on the basic level.
On the basic level here, like first.
Right.
Like,
right.
I think you're doing everything right. Everything you're doing right now is the right thing to do. And you're resetting yourself. And in the process of, in the process of pressing the reset button, you're going to start, eventually you'll start slowly dipping your toe in the water. It may be scary. You might come back to shore.
Right.
And then,
it's uncomfortable as hell though.
Yeah.
Resetting yourself.
Yeah. But like
so
you have to do, and then maybe you'll have like one day where you're like, I'm going to go out and do this. And you're going to take that jump. And you know what? You're like, I didn't like that jump. I'm going to come back to the shore for a little while. I didn't do, I didn't do what I wanted to do. I didn't act the way I wanted to.
Right.
I didn't protect my boundary the way I wanted to in this situation. This is kind of what happened. Maybe I wasn't ready for it. Let's just go back to resetting myself again. Maybe I'm not going to stay there as long as I did before, but then I'll try again. And then, it's a baby step outward. And then, okay, that worked. And now I'm okay standing here. I'm not back on the shore. I'm a little bit in the water. I feel a little bit safe. Let me just stay here for a little bit. And like, I'm comfortable where I am, and slower and slower and slower, you'll get there. But it sounds to me like you know exactly where you are, what needs to be done. There's just a lot of trust going on. You're resetting your safety net within yourself of who you are and what you need and what you want, and your self-love for yourself. Not a lot of people will figure out, like, I need to love myself first. And I really be, who I am. And then let's get back into the trust factor. Cause right now you've lacked trust in yourself and your decision-making process. So to me, it sounds like that you are on the right path. You're going to get to where you're going to get. You're going to have a lot of, steps forward and steps backward and steps forwards and steps backwards. But to me, it sounds like, you know what you're doing.
No, I definitely do.
Yeah.
I do. I would like to add, just for your audience.
Yeah.
Because I know there's a lot of people that are married, even if they're not married, they have children or, whatever. And I have a child, I have a 7-year-old, and she was affected, well, I was physically present during that period of time. I wasn't like emotionally present. And, she was going through the separation with me and her father, and she was blah, 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 blah. I could go on for days about that. But when I finally, and I'm telling you, this just spoke volumes alone. When I cut off the relationship with this person, my daughter started thriving. Like, literally, like, I feel like my behavior was repressing her. Like, she wasn't feeling happy because she knew I wasn't happy. And she was picking up on my behaviors as much as I tried to hide them and mask them, when I was with her or when I had her. She knew. I mean, she's not an idiot. And literally, like, she is so happy now, like happier than I've seen her in a few years. And that alone was motivation for me. Like, that alone, like, just even her, she was so happy because I had to have that conversation with her. Like, I sat down with her and I told her, like, look, we are not going to see him again. We're not going to, and that's the only other man aside from her father that's been in her life. And I said, we're not going to see him again. Like, it's over, what are your concerns? Are you sad? She's like, I'm sad, I'm in the midst of, literally, like, we've had this conversation and she could not be happier because she no longer sees me upset over him.
And that's a motivation enough for you to set an example now and
absolutely,
just so she doesn't fall eventually, into the same kind, because, her picking up on how you're doing and feeling sad about it is a code, you don't want to raise someone who's in a codependency. Now you have the opportunity now to
right.
to fix what's
right.
happening just by being a good you, a healthy you.
Right. Just even healthy, and literally, I know I'm going off on a tangent, but like I would, for example, okay, me taking her to the park in March of 2018 versus me taking her to the park now, it's a completely different dynamic. You know what I mean? I could take her and do something with her, but she knew I wasn't like engaged. I wasn't there. I wasn't, I was just going through the motions. Now I take her somewhere and I'm involved. Like, I'm there. I'm all on her. You know what I mean? Like, I'm with her. I'm doing it with her. Like, she gets it. Like, her attention, like, I don't know. I can't even explain it, but like, she's just like a completely different child. Like, she's always been a good child, but she's like a completely different child. Like, I don't know. It just speaks to me because I know there's so many parents that like go through that and like they don't understand or don't realize how much it affects the children, and it does. Like, it definitely does.
Well, it's good that you can see the difference, and that
right.
that there, that there's a distance, that there's a difference, and you should be proud of yourself that you can see those things, and that
right.
That you're doing it and aware of it, so if there are issues as she gets maybe a little older, that exactly where it came from and what it stems from, and you can have an open
right.
discussion about it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, thank you, Grace, for being on the show. I loved having this conversation. I did. No, we do you, before we leave, do you have anything last parting words for everyone?
No contact. Number one. No contact at all costs. I'm telling you.
All right. Well,
I tried everything else. That was the only thing that helped.
Well, hopefully a lot of people learn from your experience, and I really just want to thank you once again for sharing your story. It was an honor to be here and listen to you today. I'm sorry for all the technical difficulties, but even during our technical difficulties, I enjoyed our conversation within those technical difficulties.
Likewise.
And I wish nothing but the best, and hopefully we'll get an update from you in the future.
All right. Goodbye.
And that was my conversation with Grace. So thank you, Grace, once again for being on the show. There are a lot of lessons in there that I think everyone can take away from this episode. A lot of trust stuff, trusting yourself, trusting others, and taking time to reset yourself, I think, is a big and important thing for everyone to do after this happens, and doing the baby steps and everything along those lines. So once again, thank you, Grace, for being part of our show. And before I leave, I just want to remind everyone again about our fundraiser for Layla at narcissistapocalypse.com. Go to the fundraiser section, plunk down, $1, $2, $3, $4, maybe more. Help Layla get her trauma therapy for a year. She deserves it. Also, we created a Facebook group, which is different from our Facebook page. This one is a closed group now. We're doing a closed group now, so no one can see our messages outside of our closed group. It's more interactive. More people get involved. It's actually, since that has happened, has been quite lively and a lot more fun. A lot of people sharing and helping each other in there. So that is at facebook.com/groups/narcissistapocalypse. Also, we have a Reddit subreddit, and if you wanted to discuss today's episode, go to reddit.com, look up the subreddit Narcissist Apocalypse. It's a capital N on the N and a capital A on the apocalypse. And I said capital N on the N. It's a capital N on the narcissist and a capital A on apocalypse. And lastly, before we leave, if you want to read a letter to your narcissist on our episode, our special episode of Letters to Our Narcissist, we have a voicemail recorder on our website. Go to record, go to narcissistapocalypse.com, click on the record button. It's on the side of the page. It says send voicemail. It's always floating. It's hard to miss. We're accumulating these letters to have a volume 2 of that episode. So record away. And now our show is over. Be well. And until next time, take care of yourselves.